Today, I want to assume that you've decided that you're staying put as long as possible, no matter what the disaster. Come hell or high water, right? Perhaps your plan is to use your home as a base of survival operations. And that makes a lot of sense because not every survival scenario means living in a tent out in the woods or building some kind of debris shelter out of sticks. But in any long-term, widespread disaster, eventually, people will be forced to fight for resources. Why? Because mass starvation or mass dehydration, it will create mass fear and hysteria. You see, ethics, morality, and niceties, well, they go out the window when people's kids are begging for food. So let's assume you have a plan for such a fate. Perhaps you've got some strategic backups in place. Maybe you've been stockpiling food and supplies for a while. Maybe you've got a decent sized water stockpile as well. Let's say that you're adequately armed to defend your home and your resources. And maybe you've taken the time to educate yourself about lots of DIY and self-sufficiency topics. Basically, you're part of what I call the resilient few, or at least well on your way. And often your best chance of survival in crisis is on turf you're familiar with, right? Home field advantage and all of that. But even with all these layers of redundancy and thoughtful preparedness in mind, there's still two problems with this strategy that you need to address before disaster strikes. One, first, you're only one person or one family. And two, we all have neighbors. Wait, what about complete self-sufficiency, right? Listen, people can't survive completely alone. If the disaster happened to mean that food and critical resources were scarce, well, there'll be bad guys cropping up. There'll be people willing to injure or kill others for resources, especially if they have none to start with. The most dangerous folks are those who are desperate and have questionable morals, right? The more ruthless brothers and sisters out there, the ones with lots of firepower, and the people who are willing to use it in a negative way. Don't let the fact that they haven't prepared at all with any kind of food supplies or medical supplies, don't let that fool you into thinking they're not dangerous. These are the people who may have figured, hey, why waste time and money stockpiling food and gear when I can just take it from somebody else? All I need is some ammo and the will to use it. And this statement, it's a valid argument on their part. It's damn near Darwinian. The lion doesn't think twice about running the cheetah off from a kill, right? The ruthless man who's willing to exert his ruthlessness can get what he needs. And this factor multiplies when cruel people start working together. In an all-out anarchy, the police won't be there to stop them. If someone leaves no witnesses, no one can testify later should civilization reemerge. And that's the problem. It's impossible to supply your own 24-hour security for your family if you're by yourself. I mean, maybe you can count on your spouse or your 10-year-old on the roof with a deer rifle to cover the hours you have to sleep, right? But maybe not. To make matters worse, surviving will require more than just standing guard. Instead, it's wise to forge allies to share in these responsibilities. This strategy is where local neighbors can come into play. They're ripe to become your makeshift survival coalition for anyone else who plans to stay. Now, I listed two problems above, the second of which were the actual neighbors, right? But neighbors can be a double-edged sword. So, just like in normal times, your closest neighbors can be an asset or they can be a liability. They can become a close friend or they can become a time suck. All neighborhoods include a few responsible, dependable, skilled, friendly neighbors with solid morals. But all neighborhoods also include the opposite. They include weak, unreliable, unskilled, unmotivated wastes of DNA. Neighborhoods can come together to forge alliances for mutual protection and support. But only if the right people are involved. The wrong people? They can just lead to more chaos and more mutual destruction. You need to figure out which of these people live around you. First off, you need to start immediately. Don't sleep on this. You can't wait until after disaster strikes. That would be rolling the dice with your family's fate. You must figure this stuff out and who you're dealing with today. That's why I suggest you begin laying the foundations for a future survival coalition ASAP. For now, let's just call them potential survival friendships. You don't want to come across as a nut job extremist in the cul-de-sac, which you're not. You're just a rational person who's trying to forge some mutual relationships. The best case scenario is these efforts of yours will yield some friends. Buddies, perhaps, who can help swap an engine in your truck or go fishing or hiking or backpacking on weekends. There's nothing wrong with having a few friends, right? So put yourself out there if you haven't already. Introduce yourself and your family to your neighbors. Invite some of them over. Have a block party. Swap home improvement tips. Whatever. All it takes is one evening on the street grilling some burgers and drinking some beers. And after that, you'll have a decent idea who exactly you're dealing with. Sometimes, often, you can tell who you're dealing with upon the first impression. For most people, you can usually tell if someone's an asshole or a patsy in the first 30 minutes or so. After about an hour, you'll have a very good understanding of who is resilient and who's fragile. And as you get to know these people, you can steer the conversation towards resilient hobbies such as camping, hunting, fishing, firearms, martial arts, gardening, cooking, DIY projects. Why? Well, because people love to talk about their hobbies. And it's an entirely natural thing that will tell you volumes about someone. Now, you don't have to be friends with everyone. Truth be told, that could end up being a big mistake. It could end up being a liability. I mean, we all probably know that there's some folks out there that you probably want to keep a real healthy distance from. For example, someone may prove to be too ruthless and not looking to cooperate. Or they might be happy to remain part of the fragile masses, and you can disqualify those fragile people immediately. They're the ones that are likely to become severe liability in a survival situation. Either way, you'll begin to sort the good from the bad, the wheat from the chaff. Although you may be forging friendships with the wheat, don't piss off the chaff. Keep on friendly terms with everyone in your neighborhood if possible. That asshole may change their tune if shit hits the fan. So how much should you share with everyone? This doesn't mean that you need to spill the beans to all your new friends that you're building a survival coalition. No, that's a bad idea. No matter how you do it, you won't sound rational to the average neighbor. And to be taken seriously later, you must be thought of as sensible today. Just sort of file it away in your mind for future use and just enjoy your new friendship. What if the seeds of disaster start sprouting? Now, what you want to do is you want to look for those disaster scenarios that happen pretty frequently that the public can see coming, right? Such things as economic collapses, hurricanes, civil unrest. And occasionally you see these types of disasters kind of evolving over the weeks or months before the time actually arrives when the worst case hits. And in these cases, you can keep current on the news and you can ensure these new friends of yours in the neighborhood are current as well. Encourage talking amongst them about what's going on and what's coming and what could take place and how bad it could get. You may be surprised when your friends start talking about making plans. They may be feeling you out on how you plan to deal with the coming disaster. This is a perfect opportunity to work on the mutual protection concept into this conversation slowly and put your friends at ease with the notion that you all take care of each other and you can share resources. When do you start sharing? Do you tell your newfound survival coalition about your food stockpile? Do you mention your underground shelter? Do you tell them about your ammunition or your survival radio communications? Remember, the number one rule for both bunkers and stockpiles is don't talk about your bunker or your stockpile. Well, this is still a good rule, but at the same time, as the disaster approaches, you will have to share some of this information at some point. That is, if you want mutual protection. Be wary about who you share this information with. It's okay to leave most of your neighbors in the dark, at least until you ascertain their true intentions. Yes, this is a judgment call, just like most things in life and in survival. But in general, extreme caution is wiser choice than regret when it comes to sharing your prepping. That's why it can take time to build a strong survival coalition, but it's necessary for the long-term security of you and your family. It's better to find out now which neighbors can help and which can hurt in your chances of survival. I want to leave you with two final pieces of advice. Only join forces with others who, one, you can trust with your life, and two, they pull their own weight. If you can't trust them, immediately disqualify them. And if they don't bring any real critical supplies or any kind of skill sets, then they're a survival liability. This same concern goes for someone's temperament. Anyone who's unstable during normal times is not someone you want as a part of your coalition. But with anyone who meets these two requirements of trust and worth, they could be potentially an excellent coalition addition. The bottom line is this. You want to try to avoid the fragile masses and you want to seek those who are striving to become part of the resilient few. Because a strong survival coalition, it can dramatically increases your odds of survival no matter what the uncertain future holds. Everyone needs to be a part of survival coalition. Why? Because a good coalition provides lots of motivation and mentorship. Basically, a good survival coalition helps you start living a resilient life. So if you want to avoid going it alone and you want help from like-minded resilient folks, I think you should consider joining the Resilient Life. It's a program I built from the ground up. It helps you put together a survival plan. It helps you live a more resilient life. It focuses on your strategic backups. It focuses on being more mentally, physically, and emotionally resilient. And it shares ideas with like-minded folks like you and me for those who want to become more resilient and less fragile to all of life's uncertainties. And until next time, prepare, adapt, and overcome.